Hey, everybody, this is Chris
and Kathy
from Petability Podcast. We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to Petability Podcast through your favorite streaming app. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Petability Podcast and share our content on social media.
You can also support the show by making a donation. Simply go to our website at petabilitypodcast.buzzsprout.com and click on the heart symbol at the top of the page. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Petability. I'm your host, Kathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
Ooh.
What is happening over there? Do I need to call a paramedic? Are you okay over there? What is going on?
I am warming up my voice and linguistic musculature, Kathy.
Ooh, I feel like there's a segue coming here, Chris. Is there a segue coming with this podcast today?
There is, because we're discussing warm-ups and cool-downs, and it can be apropos for anything that we do.
Wonderful. I think this is a great topic because I really want people to think differently about their dog's activity and their warm-ups and their cool-downs. And I think that there may be a misconception that these warm-ups and cool-downs are daunting. And, sometimes I talk to clients and I go, I'd really like you to do warm-ups and cool-downs with your dogs. And they look at me like I just knocked their ice cream into the dirt, that I guess, all right, because it seems daunting, but it doesn't have to be. So I want people to think differently about that.
I think that a lot of folks feel like it's a drag. They want to get right to the fun activity at hand. And so it's often neglected, but I think once they listen to what we have to say, they'll actually find that it's fun. I did not appreciate this until recently. I was tasked with doing the warm-ups and cool-downs for our fitness class that I do up at an agility center. And, very, very important when we think about doing strength conditioning and sporting activities. But I think you and I agree, Kathy, that warm-ups and cool-downs are also just as important for our average pets and those that are maybe growing older, geriatric, senior. And especially if there's an injury or something, we need to kind of go slow. We need to warm our pets up into the said activity. And it doesn't have to be daunting. Like I said, it can be fun. And part of it too, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think people just don't know what it is, so what does a warm-up and cool-down consist of?
Maybe. And if I think, I'm thinking in terms of, I think people should think about their dogs as athletes, right? So even if your dog is older or younger, or even, my dog I have a little pug. And so, maybe my pug isn't doing as much activity as somebody else's border collie, but you really should think of them as an athlete. And that's because they perform feats of athleticism every day. Running, walking, stair climbing, playing, fetching. Those are all feats of athleticism. So I'd like people to sort of think of it in that way, and not only think of it as sort of physically preparing your dog, because warm-up is going to prepare your dog to go from inactivity to dynamic activity, but it's also a mental exercise. It's a focus exercise. It's a bonding experience as well. So we're getting the dog focused, you're getting focused, and the dog's focusing on you. So it can be fun. It doesn't have to be this structured, give me 20 push-ups, the 20 push-ups up here. It doesn't have to be like that. So I'd like the audience to think differently about warm-ups and cool-downs, because it's really about preventing injury. If you don't want to see Chris and I, if you don't want to see our faces in the clinic, then you should be doing warm-ups and cool-downs.
Exactly. And really the cost of not doing a warm-up activity is much higher than taking a few minutes to do it and prepare your pet for success and, like you said, injury prevention. I mean, costs not only monetarily, because it might result in vet visits or like you said, physical rehab, but also just time away from the activities you enjoy, because the costs is that they can't participate in that for a while.
Can't perform. Yeah.
Right.
Can't perform.
And so,
yeah.
how do we make these things, again, efficient? We don't want to take a lot of time to warm up our pet because they want to get to it. We want to get to it, but also that it's fun for both you as the pet owner and your pet, making it an enriching experience, not a drag, not like, oh my gosh, I have to take the time to do this.
Yeah. So I want our audience to understand what exactly a warm-up is and why we're doing it. And the reason we want you to do it is because when dogs are inactive, their muscles get cold and contracted. And essentially those muscles shorten up. So they're not fully prepared for activity. So if you think of it in the sense of yourself, you wouldn't just wake up and pop out of bed and start running, right? You wouldn't do that. I mean, unless your house was on fire, you wouldn't do it. You would get up, you'd move around, you'd get dressed, you'd brush your teeth, you'd move around. And so as you're moving around, just as our dogs are moving around, we're going to increase the heart rate and we're going to increase circulation. And with that, we're going to deliver more oxygen to the muscle tissues. And once those tissues are warmed up, then we're ready for more dynamic movement. Then we would start getting ready to do our walk or our run. That's when we would start to move. And that's all in preparation for us to try and prevent injury, right? That's what we're trying to prevent here.
Exactly. And studies have shown that through proper warm-ups and cool downs, because we're going to talk about cool downs as well, and proper conditioning and simply routine wellness exams, bringing your pet to the veterinarian to catch any problems early on, that we can prevent injuries in our pets by up to 25%. So it's definitely a worthy endeavor. And you talked about just getting out of bed and doing your routine activities. I know for me at 54 now that warming up in the morning takes a lot longer than it used to. So age and pre-existing conditions and those sorts of things definitely impact how long it takes to warm up and what those warm-up activities may be.
Right. And I think overall, especially when it comes to our geriatric population of dogs, I think it's important to discuss your dog's limitations with your veterinarian, right? So it's important to discuss and understand your dog's limitations and have this open dialogue with your veterinarian, because there are factors in your warm-up that might change. Again, I have a pug and somebody else has a border collie, and that warm-up, needs to be individual to that dog and the act that you're asking them to perform. So maybe I'm asking my dog to go for a 20-minute walk, but the border collie is not only doing his hour walk, but then maybe he's, he also chases sheep or herd sheep. But so there are factors that are that weigh in here as far as your warm-up. So you have to consider things like the weight of the dog, your dog's previous exercise tolerance, their health conditions, and movement. Is there any particular movement that's uncomfortable for your dog that shouldn't be performed? So we should have that discussion with our veterinarian first.
Absolutely. And I think that maybe, talking a little bit about starting with the athletic dog and what a performance dog would be expected to do, and discussing appropriate warm-up activities for that pet is a good place to start. So Kathy, as you mentioned, we want to do a number of things through the warm-up. So we're trying to increase the length of not only the muscles, but the associated tendons that connect the muscle to the bone, the ligaments, which connect bone to bone. And by increasing their length a little bit, we're trying to prevent strains and sprains. So a sprain is a tear of a ligament, where a strain is a tear of a muscle or tendon. So that's definitely one of the medical benefits of warming up. You also mentioned increasing their breathing and heart rate, not to the point of panting, but maybe some open mouth breathing is a good indicator that their heart rate is up, and that their cardiovascular and respiratory systems are ready to take on the load at hand. Increasing the circulation and blood flow to the muscles and ligaments, and then also how quickly the body responds to the activity that we're going to ask them to do. So warm-ups also increase the rate of the nerve impulses, making for quicker muscle contractions, faster firing of those muscles, so that they can react, whether it be they slip on a wet surface, they have to be able to react quickly, as you're going out the door with your pet dog, and maybe they slip on the steps or the deck or something like that. Or that athletic dog that is making a tight turn, and, they need to be able to gather everything up and make that movement as efficiently as possible.
And it all happens in a split second too. It all happens in a split second, that changing of direction, that quick movement. So you need to be prepared. Your dog needs to be prepared not only for dynamic movement, but what you're asking them to do. So your agility dogs, they do weave pulls. So we need to make sure that we're warming them up, laterally as well. So we need to sort of get those exercises in, think about what we're asking our dogs to perform. And it happens so quickly. It happens fast. Have you ever seen a dog go through the weave pulls at those competitions? Boom, 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 boom.
Blink of an eye, they're done. Yeah.
Exactly. You blink and they're done. I mean, I have a pug, and it would probably take all day to go through the weave pulls for him because he gets distracted. But yes, it all happens in a split second. And so could an injury. An injury could happen in a split second as well with that type of movement. So, anyway, yes, you see what I'm saying.
We talk a lot about the soft tissues and warming up, but also, related to like the joints, the cartilage, and that. So through taking the body through large movements of the joints as well as the muscles, then you're improving the circulation of the joint fluid, the synovial fluid, the WD-40 in the joints. And especially for those,
I like that. I like that. That.
People tend to connect with that term. It's great for everything, but really that's what the synovial fluid is. It's a lubricant in our joints. And when the dog has arthritis, or we have arthritis, that gets gunked up. And so we need to, get that WD in there to get those rusty, squeaky door hinges or joints, in the case of the body, moving freely again. And you mentioned earlier too about increasing the focus, right, of the dog, and the connectivity with you as their owner or the handler, in some professional cases. But when you've been with your pet for a long time, the warm-up also gives you the opportunity to notice if something's off. Trust your gut. If you take your pet through kind of a similar routine as I do before my dogs enter into agility, and, I'll be like, Julep isn't turning as well to the left as she was last week. And then, I'll assess that a little bit further and kind of check things out. So again, it's a great barometer, if you will, to know if they're ready to perform, or, unbeknownst to you, they may have done something, and it may not be a great idea to take them out there and, throw that ball or have them go over, jumps or whatever it may be. So it's a really great tool to assess if something is off.
I'm glad that you said this, because, and I don't think that this can be overstated. The first person that's going to notice that your dog is off is you, because you have this symbiotic relationship and this oneness. And so, oftentimes I have people come in and say, my dog, she has this weird little thing where she turns to the right, and it takes me maybe 15 times watching that dog to see whether it really turns to the right or not. And of course they're right, because their owners are watching, and they have this relationship, and they know when their dogs are off. So you're right. You should trust your gut. And if you're telling me your dog is going to the right, then videotape it. Let me watch it again. Let me see what's happening, because you're going to be that first person to notice that your dog is off. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. Not only is this a mental activity, but it really gives the owner sort of a brain checklist, like everything's functioning okay. All right, let's go.
Absolutely. Yep. And back to the sporting and performance dogs. The idea is, they're out to win, right? We want to get the best time, the longest leap. So, examples of sports, they're just growing every single day out there. It seems, the things that we can do with our pets in the sporting world. So we already mentioned agility. I also do a little bit of dock diving. But there's things like obedience and conformation. So conformation is the show ring. People can all relate to Westminster, and it really takes, they have to have a particular pace, a fluidity of movement. And, we may not think of that as a sport per se, but it takes a lot of endurance and preciseness of movement. And if something is off, that's going to show in the show ring. So it affects their body when they're on lead all the time in that heel position, and their neck gets tight. It alters the stride length from right to left side and so forth. So anyway, I just think that that's fascinating to think about that. And
it is, and I'm sorry, Chris, and I think that if you had a dog that was shown for conformation, giving your dog a little warm up before they get in the ring is going to give them that superior, performance. It's gonna up their performance.
Absolutely, yes. And then we have the extremes of sports like fly ball. And for our audience that doesn't know what fly ball is, it's a relay between 4 dogs. They have to fly over hurdles that are set to the shortest dog on the team, hit a box at which point a ball is released, and run back across the line where they started as fast as they can. And then the next dog goes. And so it's a lot of sprinting and stopping and starting. And again, technique, power, agility is so important for dogs.
Explosive power. It's what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that power. We don't think about that when it comes to our pet dogs, but you go outside and you have a chuck it in your hand, and the dog gets out of the car at the park, and you immediately wang that ball as far as you can. I mean, you're basically asking the same thing of your pet dog, to go from 0 to 60 in no time without any warm up. And that's, again, just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
So Kathy, let's talk a little bit about the difference between dynamic stretching and warm-up exercises that we're going to give some pointers regarding, and static stretching. Because when it comes to performance, we're all about producing a high quality movement for that maximum performance. And really, static stretching is contraindicated.
It really is. And I tell our clients that as well too. First of all, static stretching, can you explain to the audience what static stretching is, so that we have an understanding of what we're talking about as far as, we're in position, we're not,
sure,
moving.
And I think that we do a fair amount of this in rehabilitation because it is indicated in that context.
Yes.
So basically, the animal is at rest. We're taking a particular joint or limb, part of the body, and as the owner or therapist, we are moving that limb through a range to impart stretch on the muscles, tendons, and ligaments passively. So the pet is not doing anything actively on their own. They are to stay relaxed. We go to the point of tension. It's gentle. We hold it, striving for at least 30 seconds. And the goal is to actually elongate and lengthen those muscles. But when it comes to performance, we don't want to make the muscles too long. So yes, we're warming them up. We're getting them to an ideal length through physical activity. If the muscle is too long after a static stretch, it can actually inhibit the performance, resulting in decreased strength and power that lasts in people up to 24 hours after.
Whoa.
Yes.
Really? I did not know that.
After the static stretch. Right.
Right.
So, I remember when I was younger and participated in sports and, high school and such, to start out every practice, you get down on the gym floor or what have you, and you'd, do your hamstring stretch and your quad stretch and so forth. They're not doing that these days. If you watch, the warm-ups of professional teams, college teams, and so forth, they're doing things like high knees and, kicking out and touching their toes in front of them as they're walking across the gym floor, and twisting right and left. And that's what we want to do with our pets as well. It's movement oriented.
Right. And there's strong evidence to suggest that regular static stretching as part of your warm-up really does not reduce overall injury rates. We are not, by doing static stretching, but prior to our activity, we're not really reducing the likelihood of injury, which is what we're trying to do. Yeah.
And in fact, doing nothing at all in that case is better than static stretching.
Right.
That has been shown. So the best thing to do, and again, we're going to get to this. Hold on, audience. You know, what is it? What are these?
We just keep cliffhanger.
Yeah, cliffhanger.
Go right into them. Yeah.
But it's the worst thing to do is a static stretch.
Mm-hmm.
The next worst thing to do is nothing at all. And the very best thing to do is your dynamic stretches and warm-ups.
Okay. All right, let's go right into that, Chris, because I'm excited.
I'm excited to
hear what you have to say about the dynamic.
So I'll give some examples. So examples of dynamic stretching. And again, this is geared toward the athletic dog, the performance dog, but it can certainly be applied to your pet at the level of their athleticism, you know, and what you're asking them to do. But examples would be gentle tugging, asking them to play a little bit of tug of war. It actually stretches the front legs forward, again, gets those muscles warmed up and the blood flowing. Then doing a play bow too. And see, what makes this stuff so fun, Kathy, is that if your dog doesn't know how to do this, it's an opportunity for training.
Right.
So you can teach them a new trick, and they get the physical benefit of what that quote trick is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My trainer says there's always time for a little training. There's always time. And this could be the time you teach your dog. It never stops. This would be the time to teach your dog something new. It's exciting and fun.
So both the tug and the play bow are great at primarily the front limbs, but total body. If you want to do more of a stretch geared toward the hind limbs, you would have your pet put its front feet up on something. So whether it's a stair, a chair, maybe even, you know, you do a little squat and have them put their paws on your thighs, that opens up the hip joints, shifts the weight to the back, and generally elongates your pet, you know, stretching out their spine in an extended position as well.
You get those hip flexors, right? When you're getting up like that, you're getting those hip flexors. Yeah,
exactly. And then in terms of more trunk oriented and side to side and opening up the shoulders would be a cookie stretch, where you're bringing a treat. And who doesn't love treats? All these quote exercises require that you have treats at hand, because they're not going to do it for nothing. I wouldn't do it for nothing.
I'm not doing none of that for free. I need a cookie.
So the cookie stretch, you would be stretching their neck. If you held them generally in one place, I like to do it from behind the pet, and then bring their nose to their shoulder. That's really going to stretch their neck and shoulder on the opposite side. Then you can bring it back a little farther along their trunk, maybe even back to their hip, and then move it down on that same side to their knee or their foot. And it's really going to stretch the entire neck and various muscles of the trunk as they go through these stretches at different levels to different parts of the body. And as they get better at it, you can shake it up and go, you know, right, left, randomize it, and so forth. So it becomes really fun.
Let me ask you this, Chris, how is this warm up different from, say, conditioning exercises? What's the difference there?
Sure. Conditioning exercises are primarily focused at gaining strength, power, endurance, stamina. Mm-hmm. So these warm-up exercises are preparing your pet to do the conditioning, if you will. So they're much less intense, shorter in time, fewer repetitions. So example would be that when you're doing a warm-up, you're generally only taking 5 to 10 minutes. You're doing 1 to 2 sets, preferably 2 sets of 3 to 5 repetitions of whatever you choose to do. If it's something that you can't count, like we're going to talk about using walking, moving into trotting, and then jogging as a warm-up, you might do that for 2 to 3 minutes. So it's really important that you do these exercises about 5 to 20 minutes prior to said activity. What that means is, you know, you can't do all of these warm-ups and exercises at home, then put your dog in the car in the crate and drive 2 hours to the beach or the park, let them out and go crazy. That does no good. The warm-ups need to be done imminently before the desired activity. That makes sense?
So the effects of warm-ups don't last long. You need to go warm up and then go into your activity because there's a short window between that warm-up and the next level of activity that
That's
doesn't
right.
last.
That's right. Yep.
So I think I'm just going to go over a couple of other dynamic stretches and warm-up exercises, Chris, if that's okay. And then I want to hear what you do with your dogs, because I know your Cavaliers do agility, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys do with your dogs for warm-ups. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my dog, which is what I love to do the most, is talk about my dog, because one of the considering factors for his warm-up is that he's a brachiocephalic breed. So he's a little pug with a little short nose and a little short face. So those warm-ups need to be specific for him to make sure that he, that he does well and succeeds and doesn't overheat. So one of my favorite exercises that I call the high five. When somebody goes high five, down low, too slow, that one. You know what I'm talking about? It's actually a good exercise, except for skip the too slow part. Is to give the paw or the shake or the wave. So what I oftentimes do is I'll have my dog give the paw or a high five. And I'll do it at different heights as well. So kind of like high five and then the down low. And I get him to hold it for a few seconds as well, because that's going to work that shoulder. And that shoulder is going to be rotating and moving. And that's going to mimic some of the turns and stuff that he's going to be doing when he's walking, or for our agility dogs when they're doing like the weave pulls and stuff like that. You're just going to get that shoulder moving and that shoulder warmed up. But for him, because he's brachiocephalic and he's got that short little nose, some of his exercises, are really, really simple. Sometimes we'll just do things like, figure eights. We'll do figure eights around, because he's small, I'll usually use 2-liter soda bottles. We'll go around and we'll weave. And you can, for him, I started out wide, and then as he got better with them, I made them a little tighter, maybe a little bit more challenging. And then we'll move into things like sidestepping or backwards walking, just to get those muscles warmed up. So we're going to do those abductors and adductors, when you're going sideways, right? Mm-hmm. And then those backups, we're going to hit those back of the legs for that as well. So I make his very simple, and then when we're out for a walk, what I'll do before we go, for our walk that's going to have our normal stride, we'll take a slow, 2 or 3 minute walk. Around 5 minutes, I'll start trotting. And then after, maybe 3 more minutes, we'll start picking up that pace as well, just to warm up those tissues. And then we'll start, finishing our walk at the regular pace. So that's appropriate to him, because that's what I'm asking him to do. I'm asking him to go for a walk, but we're going for a long walk. So I want him to be warmed up. So I think that's appropriate to his little size and his activity level and the things that I'm asking him to do. How about you guys? What do you guys do?
Right. So, we do go for walks in the neighborhood, and I think anybody should appreciate the benefit of just starting out slowly and gradually increasing the pace. That is warming up. So again, you don't, go out the front door, your dog's pulling. We've already had a podcast on the benefits of some of these anti-pull harnesses and things like that. So you want to keep your pet under control and, start out calmly and slowly, and then gradually increase their heart rate and respiratory rate and so forth. So, that's on a daily basis that we're doing that. But we also do agility 1 to 2 times a week. And so, while everybody else is chit-chatting, and I'm chit-chatting too, because I can multitask, I'm also taking my pets through kind of their routine, their warm-up routine. And it doesn't take long, and they love it, and they get treats, and they get so excited, and they know that they're going to get out in that ring soon. So
nobody gets more excited about like getting attention like a Cavalier. They are just like, Yahoo!
Yeah, you know what I recently heard from one of my friends that's in the show world. She said that the mantra there is for Cavaliers is no wag, no win. So they can look like crap, but if they're wagging, they can win, or vice versa. They could be beautiful specimens, but if they're not wagging that tail, nope,
so cute. With those
never going to win.
Eyes and their tail wag, but they need to do that. It's important for them because they're going to be doing performance. They're going to be doing agility, and so I like that you do the walk, trot, jog with them, because that's appropriate for their part of their warm up.
Exactly. And then what we'll move into the things that they like to do. They're not tuggers, so I don't do that. But they do know how to do the play bow. So I ask them to do that a few times. Put their front feet up, on me and reaching and stretching up. I will do the cookie stretches to each side a couple of times. And then we do the high five, both on the right and the left. And I love the high five too, because it really causes them to have to twist, to rotate along the length of their spine, over to the right and over to the left. Whereas the cookie stretch is more of a lateral bend, a side bend, right? So I don't know if our audience can appreciate that, but we're moving along different planes of motion in the body. So you have like the up and down, the forward, backward, the side to side rotation, and you want to try to hit all of that. And then we'll move into more active, if you will, exercises in terms of the warm up. So I'll have them spin or twist. So when they go clockwise, I call it a twist. When they go counterclockwise, I ask them to do a spin. And luring them with the treat works really effectively because they want to get that treat. So I can have them, again, starting out with little wider circles and then tightening that up. Again, little dogs, they're about 12 pounds, so I can have them do figure eights or weaving between my legs as I'm standing statically or walking, and they can zigzag between my legs. I do have them do the lateral or the side stepping, backing up. And then after I have them back up, about maybe 6-8 feet, then I have them come forward in a crawl. I'll have them crawl forward and then and then back up again and crawl forward. And then some of the exercises that I love, and I think almost every pet owner out there can do these, and I have made them into names that maybe people can remember a little bit more, because if we think about it with ourselves, right? So when you ask a dog to sit and then stand, that is like a doggy squat. Right?
Yeah.
So, when we do a squat at the gym, we're lowering our rear end down, we're using our glutes and our quads to push back up. So are they. So I'll have them touch their bum to the ground and come right back up into standing. So treat up over the head, they sit down, bring the treat out a few inches. The dog doesn't move a whole lot, just trying to stay in place, but doing repeated sit to stands or squats. Then I'll have them go from a standing position directly to lying. And then from that lying down position, back up to the stand. So no sitting in between. And that's kind of like doing a plank, right? So when we're holding, our position, on our hands or our elbows. So I call that the doggy plank.
The doggy plank.
And then finally is the push-up. So as you can imagine, dog is sitting. They walk their front limbs down to lying and then walk their front limbs back up to a sitting position. So they're going up and down with their front limbs in a push-up fashion. And I'll do, 5, 10 of each of those, and then I'll mix it up. Again, they've gotten really good at it. So it's a great game, but I'm like, sit down, up, sound, and back and forth and back and forth. They're like, oh my God, this is so great. And have them go through it at pace, right? So that they're, again, mentally challenged and paying attention as well as physically warmed up.
And how do you think, how should we tell our audience members who have dogs that they're warming up, which exercises do they pick? What's going to be most helpful for their dog? What would you say to that?
I think the simplest thing is to just do less of what the activity is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, let's take ball tossing, for example. Sure, there are specific exercises that we can pick because they have to sprint out, get the ball, come back. They may make a very quick turn to the right or left, stopping, starting. So there are specific exercises that would be great for that. But you could also simply start out by having the dog in front of you and just tossing the ball toward them, that they catch it. Trying to keep their feet on the ground to start, and then maybe toss a little ways to the right, little ways to the left, maybe a little bit up so they do a little pop up, right? So their back legs stay grounded, but maybe their front feet come off a few inches and they catch the ball if they're good at doing that. If not, then maybe you have them, sit or stand by your side and you just roll the ball out, 10, 15 feet. And then you gradually go farther and farther. And by starting slowly, the pace can also be slow. Again, this is a training opportunity, right? So the dog brings the ball back to you or the Frisbee back to you. You work on dropping it, leaving it, you pick it up, you throw it. They could maybe impulse control, like they can't go until you give them a release word.
Yeah.
And, and then again, tossing it just a short distance. And so maybe you're only doing, 2 or 3 tosses per minute. And then as they warm up, you're doing it at a faster pace, not only throwing it farther, but doing it more quickly. What do you think of that?
Right. That makes total sense. We're just gradually increasing the intensity of the ball play. So, and it's easy because you already got to jump to what you wanted to do, which was fun. And I didn't knock your ice cream in the dirt. You actually got to do a little bit of what you wanted to do as far as the warm up goes. And I think that that's going to be helpful for preventing injury. And, Chris, I really wanted to I'm going to touch a little bit on the senior dog, because the senior dog should be warming up as well. And so I think that there may also be this thought that, well, my dog is old and, and I don't, if we're going to go for a 20-minute walk and 10 minutes of the warm up, then we're not, we really having any fun or walking? But
right.
I think it's really important to warm up these geriatric dogs, and we should still consider those dogs athletes, just like we were thinking about our younger dogs and our performance dogs, and they need to do a little bit of a warm up too. And so what I tell people is, is that barring the casual, stroll, right? I think we should warm up our dogs that are senior. And your senior dogs are going to vary in their mobility and their ability to do things. So maybe your 10-year-old Great Dane is different in their activity level than your 10-year-old Yorkie. So what I like to tell people too is the other thing one of the things I start with sometimes with some of my patients who are geriatric and have osteoarthritis or mobility issues is sometimes I'll actually incorporate moist heat into the dog's warm-up program. So if I know that the dog has an arthritic elbow, before they get up, I will have a hot pack on their elbow for 10 minutes just to warm that joint up before we start moving. And then we'll get up and start doing more of our warm-up exercises. And what I like to follow that with is a quick rub down along the body. So this exercise is just preparing the dog for movement, and it's really good for body awareness. So I rub my hands over the dog's head, down the spine, down the flank. I run my hands down the legs to the toes. If the dog can do it, I'll actually lift up the legs slightly and separate the toes, a little bit, if they're not going to fall over, if this dog is if that's something you can do. But
love it.
Yeah, and also by simply just sort of like picking up the leg while you're doing that, it also causes the dog to sort of have to balance on those other 3 legs and use their abdominal muscles to be able to balance themselves. So if your dog's going to fall over by picking up a leg, you can discount that one. But I like to warm them up by rubbing the body. So a little moist heat on that arthritic joint before you get up, and a little rub down is what I'll start with for some of these dogs that are, senior. Mm-hmm. So, and then I think, again, we're talking about, putting the warm up appropriate to the activity. So for these senior dogs, I like the high 5 wave that we talked about because it gets that shoulders moving. I like doing things that are simple. So circle walking, so I'll start with like a 10-foot diameter circle, have the dog walk in a circle. I stand in the middle because I'm lazy and have the dog walk around me. And I don't
and we have to warn our owners, you will get dizzy. Don't get dizzy.
You'll get dizzy. And then what you do to one side, you should do to the other. So we're walking in a circle one way, and then maybe 2 or 3 times in one direction, and then 2 or 3 times in the other direction. And then maybe again, we'll start with a light, slow walk. If the geriatric dog is able to, maybe we'll pick up to a trot as well. Just to get those tissues warmed up, because I don't want anybody's dog to have an injury. I really don't. But I think that, our senior dogs are not going to recover as fast from injury as, our younger dogs. And that's the same for us. I'm not going to recover from that, that ankle twist that I had when I was 20. I'm going to recover faster from that now that I'm 53. It might take me a little bit longer to recover from that. So I really don't want to see these geriatric dogs take long to or have longer prolonged recoveries from pain or injury. So I think it's important to do that for them as well. And then I think I touched upon this earlier when we were talking about, talking to your veterinarian about your dog, changing your dog's activity and warm-ups. And this can't be overstated, really. If you have a senior dog and you're thinking about doing warm-up activities, really talk to your doctor about what their limitations are as far as movement goes. So, can your dog perform a figure 8? Can your dog perform a tight figure 8? Can your dog, go to the left and the right in a circle? Can they move their neck, left to right, things like that. So just talk to them ahead of time before you start doing those things with your senior dogs.
Yeah, you definitely want to get, clearance and the okay that
Get the green light.
yeah, and not only related to movement and having the strength and flexibility to do so, but also things like the condition of their heart and lungs.
Right.
There are breeds, Cavaliers being one of them, that have heart disease, and 100% of them have heart disease by the time they're geriatric. So I need to be very mindful of that as my dogs age. Right now they're unrestricted and non-medicated, but they already have some leaky valves. So I'm certainly going to be paying attention and making sure that I'm monitoring things like, labor breathing and coughing and so forth.
Yeah, and fatigue, we don't want to fatigue the dog so much on that, we really shouldn't fatigue the dog on the warm up. We want to get the heart rate up, but we don't want to fatigue them.
Absolutely.
And then, the other thing I get from clients a lot is, well, what if my dog resists doing these warm up activities? And I think, there may be several reasons why a dog might resist sort of warm up activities. And one is maybe they simply they don't understand what you're asking them to do, right? And then the other reason is, again, check with your veterinarian. Maybe some of those movements are uncomfortable for some of those, geriatric dogs. So we don't want to force our dogs to perform that warm up, but we can incorporate it, like you said, like with the ball playing, start with something low and up the intensity. So the dog understands what the activity is, and we're still preparing them for movement and lessen the likelihood of injury.
Kathy, what are some of the things, you said that your clients will ask you, well, they don't seem to want to do it. They don't enjoy it. What are some of the signs that a pet owner can look for that maybe they're uncomfortable or, doing too much in terms of the warm up?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that sitting down or laying down, during those activities. So ensure sometimes maybe it's just a little bit of, I don't want to go that direction, I want to go that direction, but it should be noted, for sitting down, laying down, panting, crying, forcefully sort of resisting that leash,
Yeah.
if you're
trying to escape.
Trying to escape. In my case, my dog will sometimes give me the eye roll and he's like, please. And like, I don't want to go, I don't want to do that. And so maybe I just move into something else it's easier for him to do. But that sitting down, that laying down, and that resistance, we should note that.
And I think for the performance dogs too, there's subtle things like getting sloppy, loss of form.
Right.
So, if you're asking them to do 10 of something, we talked about doing 2 sets of 5. And by that 8th one, you see your dog maybe on that squat, just kind of plopping down onto the ground.
No thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Versus slowly like lowering themselves with control, that's sloppy. That's a loss of form. They're just letting gravity take them. So you could say, oh, well, that was too much. We did that exercise last. Maybe we need to do that earlier in the routine, or instead of doing 8 warm-ups, we're going to cut it back to 6 warm-up exercises. Another subtle sign is like their back arching up.
Yeah.
They're getting uncomfortable.
Yep.
Their trunk muscles, their core muscles are starting to give way a little bit.
Fatigue.
And so they'll tense up, and that results in the back arching. And things like yawning and just again having like a pinched look on their face or what have you. You shouldn't see any of that, but just wanted to kind of alert our owners out there, what they may be looking for. Kathy, in terms of other activities for the pets out there, we already talked a little bit about, fetching a ball or a disc, but, there's other things too, like hiking, swimming, squirrel chasing.
I mean, for hiking and swimming, we talked about the swimming. Swimming is a really good strengthening exercise. And it's one of the greatest things about it, of course, is it's unweighted, right? So there's no, you're weightless when you're swimming, but it's still a pretty strenuous exercise. So for that, again, I would just I would do what you said. I would prepare the dog for swimming by doing some gentle, maybe some wading in and out first, maybe just the ball going out a little bit before we start that really heavy swimming. Same thing with the hiking. These dogs that love to hike and they're hiking for miles, change the pace, start slow, trot, jog, and then when you're starting to do your hike, now you're starting to do things like stepping over logs, going around rocks, jumping up over rocks. Those are really dynamic movements, and you're already prepared because you've started with a nice slow walk, then you've trotted, you've jogged. Now you're ready to jump that log. Now you're ready to scale that rock.
Right. And I think to effectuate these things, starting on leash, for a lot of this,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
you get to the park to do the walk, and, you can start, the dog gets out of the car, they're on leash, walk through the parking lot, you walk, on the easier trail, keeping them on leash. And then they may be on a flexi lead. So then you can let that out, right? So instead of keeping it at 6 feet, now they can go up to 16 feet, and they can stop and start at, as you continue to do your walk. Or you yourself, you keep them on that 6-foot lead, and as you said, increase the pace, maybe jog a little bit, and then maybe come back to a trot. And then after they've been doing that a few minutes, and you've started to engage some things like tree roots and rocks that they're going around and so forth, then you can take them off the leash, because they're gonna do a lot more on their own than you certainly did with them when they were restrained a bit.
Nature is the best obstacle course, isn't it?
Yes,
It's the best obstacle course.
I know, it's so funny when people ask me, so what else should we be doing? And I'm like, life becomes therapy. And so if you're already going out on, these walks, and you're taking them to the woods and things, that is a great rehabilitation therapy or conditioning, for the healthy, well dog adventure. So,
right. So much fun. Much fun. Let me ask you this, Chris, and this might be off topic, but let me ask you this. How come we don't warm up our cats? What's the deal with cats, Chris?
I know. I think when we watch our cats, they do a pretty good job of warming up themselves.
You're right. I think they are doing a lot of getting ready for movement with their own stretching and their active stretching and then going from 0 to 60,
if they ever go to 60.
If they get to 60.
Yeah.
Well, they'll get to 60. It'll just be at midnight when they're running around the house, and they'll get to 60. I don't know, it just made me think of cats, and how they differ a little bit from the dogs and what we're asking them to do, So if you have a house cat, they probably are getting themselves ready for movement on their own, with all that active stretching. So
when I was a PT for people, I often made the analogy with cats, and we had exercises called, the Cat Camel, because I was trying to emphasize to folks the importance of doing some preparatory movement, a little bit of active stretching every time you get out of bed. I said, if you ever watch a cat, when they get up, they do the downward, upward dog, arch their back, stretch out. And I said, they know something. Cats are pretty efficient, physical little beings.
They really are. They know a lot more than we do.
Yes. So if we watch what these guys do in the animal world, then and mimic that ourselves, I think we'd be in much better shape too. So
they don't, and cats don't miss anything. They get every part of their body. They don't miss anything. They've got their forelimbs, their shoulders, their back legs, their neck. They don't miss anything.
Right. And when they're stretching and they're really reaching those paws out, every single one of their toes is spread, right? And then they do that little flexion with their claws in and out, and so down to the very tippy tips. They're
so
working
smart.
Everything.
Smart. So should we move into a little bit about cool down and what cool down means for our dogs and what we can do for cooling our dogs down?
I think we should.
Yay!
So it's going to be real simple, because your cool down is a lesser version of your warm up. So it's a chance to unwind mentally. We talked about the warm up gets them focused and excited. This is going to be settling, relaxing. Okay, I'm done, and if you go through this routine, that gives them that clue that we're done with that activity, and they will be much more accepting of getting into the car again, or relaxing on the sofa when they get back from their walk or what have you.
They've made an association between these two events, that we're either walking slower or we're winding down, we're doing some of this cool down activity gives them a cue that we're about to end this activity and mentally unwind and relax. And I think the other thing that, I think it makes me think of the performance dogs, they go out there on their agility ring and then they go full out, it's the most exciting thing. The weed pulls and the shoot and the, jumping. And then to go from that to your crate is a little bit, not a little bit of a mental letdown, but really also, I haven't had a time to mentally wind down or physically wind down from going from the agility ring to the crate.
I think that's really true. They're looking for that praise and, I did a good job and woohoo. And then to just be shoved in a crate and ignored, how deflating, that would be. So you'll see a lot of these folks. I noticed this in the agility world, doing that tug and things after, maybe they get done and they grab that toy and that's their reward. That's their praise. And, and then they, maybe walk them around outside a little bit, and jog them and go through a few, stretches and so forth. And then, okay, great. It's time to be put away. And their bodies are prepared again for that so that they don't develop so much lactic acid in the muscles. So
we've got to move that. We've got to get movement. Yeah.
After performance, lactic acid can build up. That's just a normal part of physiology. And so you're right. Yeah. We want to flush that lactic acid out of the muscles, which then also helps to prevent onset of soreness later, delayed onset muscle soreness, and decreases chronic tightness and all of that from the lactic acid. So, we also talked a lot about like restoring muscles to their length, to perform, but now we've got to restore them back to the proper length to, yeah. So they'll be very shortened post-exercise because they've been contracting. So now we want to lengthen them again to their normal resting state.
Exactly. We want them to get back to the normal state that the muscle would be in at rest.
Mm-hmm.
These cool downs, they don't have to be elaborate or long. They can just smoothly move in from what activity you're doing to decreasing the intensity, slowly moving it down, mentally kind of cooling it down. It doesn't have to be daunting. When I'm not a horse person, Chris, but I've heard that when people ride horses, after they do a whole cool down routine where they just take the horse and walk them around until they've cooled off. And we can do the same for our dog. It doesn't have to last a long time. We just need to get them back to that state that we can get the metabolism moving, get that lymphatic system flushing out the lactic acid and removing the lactic acid out of the body, and just cooling down.
Right. And also decreasing respirations and heart rate back to resting level.
Yeah. And you don't want to, you would never go for a run and then hit the finish line and stop. You would never just like run and then run and then come to a complete stop.
Yeah.
That's not good for you.
We walk and move around a little bit. It's also important because blood can pool go south, basically. So it can pool in the extremities. And we've what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of siphoned all the blood off to the muscles during the activity, and you suddenly stop. Now you don't have that blood in your organs. You can get dizzy. The dogs can get dizzy. So it's important to redistribute that blood flow as well, following the activity. And sometimes, we have to pay attention to weather and conditions too, right? Mm-hmm. So like if it's really hot, in outside or in the building or whatever the case may be, maybe using some aids to help cool the pet down. Remember, they sweat between their feet, a fan so that when they're panting, they can release that hot air and cool down that way. Conversely, if it's really cold out, you were talking about those horses, and you see a lot of them when they get done with their activity, they put a blanket on them, right? Because they're sweating. They're really sweating after they've been out running or jumping, and they don't want them to cool down too quickly because then they can cramp and, bad things can happen. So, putting a jacket on your dog in cold weather or something like that to just make that cool down gradual and not too extreme.
If there was one takeaway from warm up and cool down, it's for me, preventing injury. How about you?
I think I've really grown to appreciate, as I started studying the importance of warming up and cooling down, that it's actually a plus in that I look forward to it. I look forward to doing those things, and my dog looks forward to doing those things. So there's nothing negative about it. It's fun. It's engaging. I like to be able to determine if something's off, all those things that we talked about. And it's not hard because we just go through their little routine. Again, the simplest thing is just to mimic what you might be doing,
Mm-hmm.
You talked about, I was just thinking about, we were talking about swimming, and you said maybe wading a little bit and taking them back and forth on the shore and shorter ball tosses. At that point, we were also talking about squirrel chasing, and we basically said don't do it, right? But
don't chase the squirrels.
if you were doing let's kind of pose this to our audience. If your dog is going to chase squirrels, right?
Yeah.
It's just a problem in the yard, and you have a fenced in yard, and they go out there and that's their entertainment for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So how could you mimic that activity? Well, maybe again, you would take them out on leash and do some gradual walking, but then jogging and so forth, but then stop and then start and then stop and then start, or doing a little fetching again to prepare for maybe jumping up as the squirrel goes up into the tree. So I think if we develop our creative juices, that it's possible to come up with the breakdowns of the activity at hand and maybe prevent. Because if I had a nickel for every dog I treated that was injured chasing a squirrel or a bunny, I would be a millionaire.
Have a lot of nickels.
And you can't control everything. You talk about preventing injury, but we do our best. So why not, we're not going to be able to prevent every time the dog wants to chase a squirrel, but if we can do something proactively to help and mitigate those injuries, why not?
Why not do it? And again, why not? It's a quality of life. We really don't, as much as we love doing physical therapy or rehabilitation in animals, we really don't want your animal to be injured.
We don't want to see your dogs.
We don't. We just want to play with them. We don't.
Yeah. Social play dates. That's
social play dates. But the possibility of decreasing injury in my mind is worth it. It's worth it all day long. And finding something that you and your dog enjoy doing together. It's about finding that joy. So if you have something that you both like to do, you have something that you both enjoy, incorporate that, do that, use that. I hope this was helpful for people, because I really want you to think about it in a different way. I hope that you understand or take away from this that warm-ups and cool-downs for your dogs, they don't have to be daunting, and they can be incorporated into your dog's daily life.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Chris out.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at Petability Podcast.
For more information about Kathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.